Well, hello there again, friends and family. So glad to have you here with us all. And as you might suspect, we're doing another late night report. And what we're going to be looking into is a theory I've had now for, I guess a couple years or more. And at first it was just a joke that I mentioned in conversation. But as the last few years have transpired, and especially 2020, 2021, and now 2022, it's becoming ever so clear that there are forces to be that may be forcing us, whether we like it or not, to give up something we all totally enjoy. And what might that be? Meat. Primarily beef. That's number one choice of anyone, if you can afford it. And that's what we're going to be looking at too, a little bit later on in the video, and the reasons why the prices may be where they are. So hey, stay with me and let's take a look at, are we being forced out of the meat market? So to understand where I'm going with all of this, and to sort of back up my theory of why the prices of meat are rising or being allowed to rise as much as they are. Not that there aren't certain companies profiting from that, and why the government is allowing it. And the four companies that do profit from it, that control 85% of the U.S. meat market, yep, that's beef, pork, chicken, lamb, veal, you name it, are of course JBS, one of the biggest in the world. Then there's National Meat Packing Company. Then there's people like Cargill and Tyson. They're the four that control 85% of the U.S. meat market. Think about that. And even though the current administration came out and said they were going to start to study if there was profiteering or price gouging, they have taken no action to date. And that sort of kind of led me to believe that, yeah, even though we as Americans, and rightfully those of us who are poor, i.e. senior citizens, those living on a fixed income, those that are barely making it from low-paying jobs, got families to support, and what have you, are the ones suffering from the high prices of meat that we've seen. And we saw them in 2020, and you could sort of kind of figure why. And we saw them through the first half of 2021. But as things lightened up in America, in many, many states, eased restrictions, the price did not change. It actually rose throughout most of 2021. With the latter month or two, we actually saw some reduction in prices. Or at least I did here in my area, but that might not be the case in where you live. And it was based on what the current administration said and the pricing I was seeing, and a conversation I had a year or two ago back with a friend, where I actually jokingly brought up the fact, I know Americans are not going to give up their meat or their beef. And you may wonder what that's all about. Well, about 4 years back, there became a thing, cows fart. Yep, they do. They also poop. And those are leading causes of methane, which is a many times more powerful climate-changing gas than even CO2. Because as you all might know, most people aren't buying the fact that 416 parts per million CO2 is having that drastic of effect on our climate. Many are, many aren't. It becomes that great divide again, like the Grand Canyon. Those who believe it are on one side, and those who don't and question it are on the other side. I spent a lot of time looking into it. And the more time I spent thinking, that big light bulb in the sky called the sun probably has a whole lot more to do with it than they're giving it credit. And then secondly, if you look at volcanic eruptions all around the world at any one given time, and how they've been over history, which granted, here of late, especially since, what they're calling the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, have been increasing. But all that given, they can't do anything about the sun or the volcanoes. There's no way to tax it. There's no way to control it. But you know what they can do? They can control CO2 production, and they can also now control methane production, primarily caused by the production of meat for consumption, not only in the U.S., but globally and worldwide. And they contribute some amazing percentages to meat production. They take into every aspect, not only the cattle, the pigs, the sheep, chickens, the whole 9 yards. They also go into all the animal feed that must be produced, all the water, the land, deforestation, and that's where we're at now at the site, is to look at 7 of the top reasons, and this is from Greenpeace. And like always, all the articles that I use in these, I will leave a link to in the description below the video. So in case you want to read them in their entirety, which I am not, you can. I'm just right here with this to show you their top 7 reasons. I'm not going to go in depth on any of them. So indeed, what are the 7 reasons why meat is bad for the environment? And just a little short thing here, from climate change to forest fires to human rights abuses. The global industrial meat industry leaves a trail of destruction all over the world. Millions of people's lives depend on a dramatic reduction in the consumption of meat and dairy. And it's just not red meat. That's the problem. And we're just going to scroll down. And that, well, number 1, causes deforestation and forest fires. Industrial meat is the single biggest cause of deforestation globally. In Brazil, farmers are deliberately setting fires, like the Amazon rainforest fires you may have seen in the news, to clear space for cattle ranching and to grow industrial animal feed, like soya, for farms back in the UK. The second reason, it causes climate change, and this is one we're going to take a look at a little bit more in depth a little bit later. The climate impact of meat is enormous, roughly equivalent to all the driving and flying of every car, truck, plane in the world. Now, I find that highly unlikely, but that's what they say. It's pushing the Amazon rainforest closer to a tipping point. 4, it's responsible for human rights abuse. If it wasn't bad enough that we're destroying the rainforest, which I agree is not a good thing. And there are many countries now taking steps to lessen that and even make it not happen. But it still does happen in countries like Brazil. It's killing wildlife, here again, by clearing the forests and destroying habitats. 6, it's increasing the risk of future pandemics like coronavirus. Now, I have a real issue with this one because coronavirus, or CV-19, I'll probably get waxed for this one. We all know that unless you can't see, can't hear, and are real kind of stupid, emanated from Wuhan, which definitely has nothing to do with destroying forests or the rainforest. Highly industrialized, highly packed center of humanity in China. And it's an inefficient way to eat, is their 7th one. You see what they say right down here. And this is where you've seen, and you've all seen it. Even I did a video on the Beyond Meat burger, which is a plant-based burger. No, it's not lab-grown meat. And I'll just put that out there right now. There's currently not any lab-grown meat available to consumers in the U.S. There are a couple of places in the world where it's now being offered to consumers, but the U.S. is yet to not do that. Not saying it's not coming. And this gets all back to the push to force everybody into eating a plant-based diet, as it says right here. If everyone ate a plant-based diet, we'd need 75% less farmland than we use today. It's an area equivalent to the U.S., China, Europe, and Australia combined. That's because it takes less land to grow food directly for humans than to feed animals, which humans then eat. Now, I would tend to very much disagree with that, because back in the day, because of the wife, she wanted to go vegetarian for health reasons, and I went along with it for a while. And the number one vegetarian choice to replace meat protein is, of course, beans, or legumes as they are called, which are, your pintos, your white beans, your limas, your lentils, your black beans. I mean, I think we've all seen black bean burgers from time to time. Yes, that's as close as you're going to get to it. But pound per pound, beans do not have anywhere near the protein content that meat does. But that's a whole argument for another video. Here's the push. And we've all seen it, especially on mainstream media. The push is to force humanity, and America first, because it's ever stronger here, and in other countries such as the UK and the European Union, to get everyone on a plant-based diet. Why? To save the planet. And that's where all this is going. So now that we know the 7 main reasons, according to Greenpeace, and like I say, you can do any search, just do a simple Google search of meat, or is meat bad for the planet? And you will literally be bombarded by thousands, tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of articles telling you just why. Meat, everywhere from beef, chicken, to pork, to lamb, to sheep, to any type of meat. Pretty soon they'll be going after, pigeons and quail and all of that. Bad for the planet. But the number one primary reason is what we're going to look at right now. So let's scroll down here a minute. And I here again won't read this whole article. You can look at that. The number one reason. Many of our politicians, and you probably know them by name, and the mainstream media have been coming up with here the last couple of few years, is greenhouse gas emissions. Oh yeah. And they started off with beef, but then they've progressed to everything from pigs to chickens. All bad. But beef is number one. Because like I say, they fart and poop, which both are leading causes of methane. And those who are climate change mantras. It's almost become a religion, hasn't it? But like it says here, meat consumption is responsible for releasing greenhouse gases such as methane, CO2, nitrous oxide. These gases contribute to climate change such as global warming. Livestock farming contributes to these greenhouse gases in several ways. And then they get back to the destruction of the forest ecosystems, which, I admit, not a good thing. As mentioned above, this process releases enormous amounts of CO2 into the atmosphere. Raising livestock, which is what we've heard so much about here in America. Animals such as cows, and now they include sheep, create large amounts of methane as they digest food. Yes, they fart. Decaying manure, remember? They poop. The manure that ruminant animals produce also release methane. Fertilizer use. Many fertilizers used in soybean production are nitrogen-based, and these produce nitrous oxide emissions. But this is what we got to take a little look at, scientific look at what the atmosphere is actually consists of. And that's where we're going to go next. And we're going to look at a few of what constitutes our current atmospheric makeup, okay? So hold on. So right here is the major constituents of dry air by mole fraction, which is a process that they do on a gas to determine the parts per million and percentage of the different gases that make up our atmosphere. The very air you breathe. And what you're going to see right here is nitrogen in parts per million is the largest constituent of our atmosphere at 78%. Oxygen, which we as humans, all animals, and that need to survive, is about 20.9%. Then there's some argon at 0.9%, and then there's, of course, up until here recently, before we got on the cow part thing, and now that threw in sheep part too, and pooping, was carbon dioxide, CO2, at 416 parts per million. Then we got neon at 18.18, helium at 5.24. And as you can see, we're getting down to the culprit that they're using against beef, sheep, chicken, pork, and what have you, meat production all over the world, and that's methane. There is 1.87 parts per million of methane in the atmosphere. Of course, it's many times worse than CO2. But in my mind, 1.87, which is 0.000187%. Now we all know from basic math in high school that this first zero is tens, the second is hundreds, right there. Then we got thousands, 10,000s. So basically, 1.87 ten-thousandths of a percent is methane. Maybe it's just me, I'm just a little old country engineer that spent most of his life working in that field. I really have a problem that this is causing a devastating effect, or the fact that, it was causing global warming, which, as we all know, over the last decade, or actually it's been the last 5 to 6 years, changed from global warming to climate change. Now everything's climate change. Doesn't matter whether we get more snowfall, more rainfall, more or less floods, drought, wildfire, everything. Everything's because of climate change. And isn't that convenient? Even though if you look back in history, it's all happened before. Even now there are many wanting to tout that the increase in volcanic eruptions and earthquakes is because of climate change. But the main driving factor of all this against meat production is that 1.87 parts per million in methane. And here again, as we saw in 2021, beef production actually rose nearly 7%, or beef consumption did, in 2021. And it's still on track. And that didn't set well with the climate change folks. Not one bit at all. Or our political current administration. And those in European Union and other developed worlds. Nope, can't have that. But since we, in America, and in other developed nations, won't give up our meat What could we do to put an end to it? How can we stop this trend and get everybody on a plant-based diet that will help us save this planet? Well, there are several ways the government could do that. And we'll just stare at this here picture of our cows eating that grass. You know, there they are, the grass-fed, free range, best of the best. Of course, I've discussed that in some of our ride-around. The way it's always been during my lifetime. For the most part, around the South. But I do understand that's not the case in many major areas, and we've all discussed that before. But what can the government do? Well, to stop what they feel is a bad way to live, bad habit, bad for your health, or bad for society, and now the climate in general, they could tax it. And that's not something they haven't done in the past. Take smoking, for instance. The whole reason to apply the massive amount of taxes on tobacco products was so people would not do it anymore, i.e. drive the cost up, where people would definitely not do what was killing them. Yeah. The same has been applied to fuel. Of course, that's all done in the guise of repairing our roads, keeping our roads up, and our infrastructure. Even though apparently it's not enough, because we have to do infrastructure bills to get our highways and bridges fixed. There seems to be never enough. So they could tax it, and that's actually been brought up. Put a consumption tax, or as it's called in the UK and the EU, a value-added tax, VAT tax, same in Canada, against meat. In other words, continue to put price pressure on it to force people to change their habits, their diet, their consumption. Yeah. And like I said, it's all been done before, with everything from tobacco products to alcohol and other items. But it's almost political suicide when you start talking about increasing the taxes on something that's vital to everyone's existence, such as food, and primarily meat, which is always the highest priced thing, regardless of what time it's been in our lifetimes, in our little buggy at the supermarket. So, if indeed it's political suicide to put taxes against meat products of any type, what can they do? Well, this is where my theory comes into play. As I've seen prices continue to increase, even though there's no reason for it. Now, there is some price pressure and related expenses to the fact that the grains used in livestock feed have risen during 2020 and 2021. But when looking into that, it only accounted for as little as 15% of the overall retail price increase we've seen. And of course, there's other consideration too, that, you know, prices are being manipulated by those top 4 producers that control 85% of the market, especially here in the U.S., and I'm sure it's probably the same in other developed nations. And that being JBS, National Meat Packing Company, Cargill, and Tyson. You know, it's basically they control wherever it goes. But that gets also back to the fact why the government wouldn't take assertive action. So where could we go to find what meat prices have looked like from, let's say, 2019 to the end of 2021? And as you're looking at right now, we're at the USDA Economic Research Service, which does a report every month. this is where you get the data. And before you start typing your waste and saying, well, I don't trust anything the government says, understand this, neither do I. So I actually took my shopping videos and what meats I could verify the prices from 2019 to the last time I went in 2022, just here on January the 27th, to get an idea to judge whether what we're about to see from our U.S. government is actually representative of what I was seeing here in the deep south of Alabama. So stay tuned. Keep watching before you start typing away. Okay? So, what this is right here in front of you is a report put out monthly by the USDA that goes over beef prices. Now, it's not every exact cut of beef or pork or what have you. They don't do that. But they do quite a few, which gives us an idea of where things are. And if you look up here, it starts in December 2019. It ends in December 2021. And what I did, I came down here through the bottom and I put in a formula where I could see the price difference, increased percentage-wise, of what it was in 2019 of December to December 2021. Like here in the first column, round roast. It's increased 18.7%. All uncooked beef roast, this would be sirloin tip, round, chuck, what have you, has increased to 20.3%. Round steak, 18.6% primarily. Sirloin steak, 23.3% rounded. Beef for stew, boneless, which you've seen me be exasperated over the high cost of it, has went up nearly 22%. And then they say all uncooked beef steaks is at 22.4%. And all uncooked other beef, not veal, is basically 28%. Then they get in to bacon. It's up over 24% since December 2019. Pork chops up 13.4%. Pork chops boneless 13.7%. All pork chops, if you throw them all in the bucket, it's 15.1% increase. Hams, they're up 15.7%. All ham, not canned or sliced, is up 18.13%. And what do they mean by that? That takes in boneless, spiral sliced, all of it. All other pork, excluding canned and sliced, is up 20.98%, or basically 21%. Then they look at some chicken. Retail broiler. You know, that would basically be the chickens that come out of the chicken processing plants that, you know, are cut and made into parts, whether that be drumsticks, thighs, bone-in, breast, boneless, what have you, is up 13.4%. Retail. Wholesale is up 21.6%. Now that's wholesale prior to it gets to retail. Then they kick it up another 13.4%. Chicken fresh whole is up 9.71%. Chicken legs, bone-in, up 13%. Chicken boneless breast is up 16.43%. Now part of that is just not, that's about preference. I know so many people, they won't buy any chicken boneless breast. They just won't, for various reasons. ease of use, don't have to debone it, don't want the bones. They can make chicken tenders, what have you. But then they go on to show us here eggs. They're up 14.15% overall, all grades. Milk, up 14.8%. On a plus note though, American processed cheese is down 0.4%, and cheddar overall is down 0.9%. And ice cream only rose by 0.5%. So, this is what the government is saying. But like I said, before you start typing away, don't believe nothing the government says, I did another thing. I went and watched a video from December of 2019 and wrote down what prices I could of certain beef cuts. Of course, it was a holiday shopping video, so I didn't do the whole price check all over the whole meat counter. Then I compared what I could to what I'd went over pricing here on January 27th, 2022. So let's switch over there real quick and see how that compares to these. Now bear these in mind. And I'll leave a link to the site in the USDA where if you want to take a look at all this, you can do that too. So let's switch over to the little spreadsheet I made. So here's the little spreadsheet I made. It says right here, meat prices from 12/2019 to 1/2022. And I list the meat type, put in the years for 2019, 2022 columns, and the percent change, increase or decrease. You can hope, right? Now the first thing I wanted to take a look at was bacon. I think we can all understand bacon has went up quite a bit. Well, brine bacon in 2019 cost $2.86, and that's 12 ounces. But in 2022, it's up to $4.13. That's a 30.75% change. Just brine bacon. Conecuh, which is premium bacon, made right here in Evergreen, Alabama, about an hour and a half from me, was $4.49 a pound 2019. Now it's $7.59. 40.84% increase. Guatley, a lower name brand, $3.21. 2022, $3.80. 15.53%. Of course, my favorite hotel brand, Sunnyland, was $3.21 in 2019. And as of my last shopping trip, thank God, it went down to $3.87, which is only a 17% increase. But the thing that even, I knew hamburger went up, but you don't realize until you actually see the data. Hamburger in 2019 was $2.23 a pound that December, but in January it was $3.15. 29.2% increase. Then we get to sausage. The pound rolls of sausage. Carolina Pride between 2019 and 2022 risen by 37.83%. Tennessee Pride was only up 16.34 per pound. Sort of makes you wonder. And that's something I want to just point out right here between the bacon and the sausage. Instead of it being fairly uniform, different companies are increasing prices as they see fit. In fact, from what I'm seeing, they're all trying to make it pretty much close to the same price regardless of the brand you buy. Now to me that's price fixing. But then I'm just a little old country engineer. Whole chicken has remained the same based on the 2 times I went. Chicken drumsticks, one of my favorites, has only went up 9%. Chicken wings, and here again this gets back to popularity and demand. Chicken wings in 2019 were $2.20 a pound. In 2022, they're $3.50. 37% increase. That again gets back to not only issues in the supply chain and production and what have you that we've seen in 2022 and 2021, but demand. Chicken thighs, my other favorite, also went up only 9%. And then we take a look at a few cuts of beef that I could compare between the two shopping trips. Ribeye is increased 15.25% from $12.50 a pound to $14.75. Of course, we all know all beef was way more higher during 2020, and that's where I've seen it come down some. New York strip was $9 a pound in 2019, $10 a pound my last shopping trip, 10% increase. T-bone was at 8 in January. It was $10.25, a 21.95% increase. Which, here again, see, it's not staying the equivalent. If in all in fact, overall beef prices were rising by a certain percentage. Chuck roast was $4.90 in 2019, $5.99 in January 2022, for an 18.2% increase. So the overall, when I averaged all these increases together, meat prices went up 21.1% in my area. Remember what the government was saying. Let's just go back and take a quick check. They said, their pricing as far as increases was anywhere from 12%, nearly 13%, to over 24%, 27%, 21, 22, 23. So overall, what the USDA is reporting, and you got to understand what the USDA reports, they report average price per pound across the whole entire U.S. So wherever you live could be way cheaper or way more, depending on where you live. Whether you're in a metropolitan or urban area or in a very exclusive rural area, like Mr. Tom. All that impacts the prices that you're charged. But then I went one step more, and I just broke out the beef, the hamburger, which is $73.27, your base ground meat, ribeyes, New York strip, T-bone, chuck roast. And here again I averaged the prices between the 2 years, and I found that between 2019 and 2022 the prices went up $1.50. What does that relate to when you average all the cost increases? 18.92%, which is in line with what the USDA is reporting nationwide. So I would have to agree that maybe, and I've said this many times before, not everybody's corrupt in our government. There's a few that actually do their job and do it truthfully. Of course, they're not elected to office or affected by elected officials, I'm thinking. So where am I going with all this? Well, this gets back to the idea they couldn't tax us out of it. They can't convince us out of decreasing our meat consumption, especially here in America, and I'm sure the same's in the UK and the EU and every other developed nation, including China and Russia. So what more can they do? Well, they can't, or I hope they wouldn't, tell meat producers to increase prices. But what can they do? Well, what they can do, folks, is they can just allow it to happen. And if you think it's the farmers and the ranchers that are making a killing out of this, just like it wasn't the people who grow trees for lumber are not making a fortune out of the huge increase in lumber prices. Trust me, they're not. You can check on that. Then, what is happening? Whether they're driving it or just letting it be, well, it's quite apparent that the four main controllers of the meat market are increasing prices, reaping profits, and all of them have had historic profit increases in the last 2 years. As hard as that may be for anybody to believe, in the billions of dollars. Oh yeah. See, right now, our politicians don't have to do nothing but just let it continue. But just to show you, it's not the farmers making out. We go over here to another Excel spreadsheet that you can also get off that same site that I just showed you from the USDA. And right here is the column, farm to wholesale, for cattle ranchers and other farmers that raise animals for meat production. No, they're not seeing it, and this will prove it. Right here on beef, farm to wholesale. July the 21st, it was at $1.55 a pound. From where they sold it to the processors. It went up to a high of $2.12.8 in September of 21. But since then, it has been declining. In October, it was only $1.59.8. In November, it dropped down to $1.40.6 per pound. And then, in closing of 2021 December, farm to wholesale price was only $1.02. Now, have we seen that there price decrease to the consumer? Well, the answer to that would be absolutely not. We have not. Same is true with pork, farm to wholesale. Its high was in August of 2021 at $1.05 a pound. Since then, it has declined. Now, it did jump up a little bit in October of 2021 to 94 cents a pound. But then, November, it was 80 cents, and then closed out the year at 76.9%. It surely did. So the farmers aren't making the killing, folks. Of course, they never do. But then you can look here at chicken, poultry, and eggs. Something you'll see right here is broilers have actually constantly risen in price. Now, some of that's going to be, and I'm thinking in my mind, I know myself, and you haven't seen Mr. Tom buy any beef in a long, long, long time. I've been eating out of my freezer. And that pile's getting slimmer by the day. But I'm going back to the ways of the 50s and the 60s, where meat wasn't a main item. It was a minimum item used for flavoring and enhancing a dish, not making up the entire meal. You know, my days of a steak and a baked potato are probably gone for a while. But you can see right here, July 21, just what it was. Broilers were $1.17 a pound. December of 21, they're $1.32. And I think that's driven by more and more people are buying them. The thing I don't understand here is egg cents per dozen, which in July 21 was 66 cents. They're saying in December they're only 22 cents. Now, unless I'm living in an alternate universe, the last time I went to the supermarket, eggs were still up way more than they had been in the past. Now, that doesn't mean that Superfoods or any of your supermarkets, Walmart, wherever you go, have actually yet to benefit from the lower price in eggs. Maybe that's coming down the line, and that'll be a good thing. So as we stare at the cows again, maybe if you didn't catch it, what's the whole point of this? The whole point of it is, if they can't convince us to do something, if they can't outright force us to do something and lower our meat consumption to save the planet, then the only other thing they can do is allow price pressure to change our habits. But they can't come out and be caught doing that. But they can just let it happen. And there's no telling. Maybe they have snuck a little whisper in some ears. Yeah, you want to raise the prices of meat? We'll just turn a blind eye to that. Wouldn't be the first time politician or government's ever done it. Nope. Or many institutions, for that matter, even universities, hospitals. Just saying. So that's my theory. Since we won't give it up voluntarily, we can't be convinced to give it up totally, to save the planet, then we'll just price you out of it. And that's exactly what's happening. Because we all know what makes up the vast majority of this world, even our country here in America. Well, those are people that are in poverty, living on fixed incomes, whether they're seniors, disabled, veterans, what have you. That's sad. To low-income families, to lower middle-income families, that makes up the vast majority of the population. Those that are on the upper end of middle class, the high class people, especially the 5%ers and the 1%ers, does the high cost of meat, or even food in general, have any effect on them? Well, the answer to that would be probably not. I can tell you, I wouldn't care. And I'm sure they don't either. And when you think about what we pay our politicians and how happy every American would be to make that kind of money, on average, do you think they're cared? No, they don't. And maybe they're even profiting from it. But nobody will dig into all that. And it's almost humanly impossible anymore. With the way shell companies are set up, the way things are put into trust. See, if it's put in a trust, it's not mine no more. Well, at least not till I get out of office. There's all kinds of ways. But that don't mean they don't still have some impact in their investments in that. So anyway, this is where I was going with it all. And I was hoping, if you've made it this far, you give me your thoughts and ideas and what you think about all this. Are we being forced out of the meat market? Are we being made to change our habits, our diets, and our ways, whether we like it or not? Let me know in the comments below the video. So y'all, this has been a deep dive, and I hope it didn't bore you into sleep. If it did, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you need to sleep. So I'll leave a description to the video, and below that, the links that I've shown you tonight. And then you can go read them in their entirety. Maybe it'll spur you to dig a little deeper too, and see what's driving the cost increases that nobody else can explain. And if you think they're bad right now, trust me, they're going to be way more worse come third and fourth quarter 2022. Because some other things are being let to happen but there's no good reason to let happen. And that would be the cost of fertilizer. Basically the cost of nitrogen fertilizer, which is produced with natural gas. Which I might add, here in America, there is no shortage. So why is it happening here? But that'd be a whole nother video. Let me know what you think, folks. And until Gracie, and the Key Crew, Cleo, Spooky Speedy, Old Magoo, sometimes Elrod, Mr. Gray and Heathcliff. We all see you on the next video. You stay safe out there. Stay warm. Take care. Eat right. Best you can. That's getting harder every day. And may God bless each and every one of you as you bless others. Good night for now, all.